So people who have been here a while will remember the brief run-in that I had with the aristocratic utensil. He's an interesting lad. He's a monarchist. And today we're going to go over his video about how he went from a leftist to a monarchist, because I'm very interested in his transformation as somebody who went from a conservative to a leftist. You know what? Actually, it says Bernie bro. I do know how you get from Bernie bro to absolute monarchist. It's usually because you're kind of a simpleton and you like the words that Bernie said, but you don't actually understand the message or why it was good. So we'll take a look. Maybe I'm being too harsh, but we'll just take a look, an honest look at his transformation to see how he became what he is today. So without further ado, here is the Spoon Boy.
Yeah. In case the title of this video isn't obvious, this one goes out to Shoeonhead, because someone in my comment section said
Hey, we just covered her.
That Shoe had some other live stream on Instagram where she said I was one of her favorite right-wing content creators.
Not a big deal.
Naturally, seeing as I can't verify this, my immediate thought was, she was over 2 million subs, what the hell is she doing watching me? That's bollocks. But a while ago, I was in Admin City's chat. Shoe came in, I said hi, and she said, oh hello, my favorite spoon on YouTube. And I went, wait, you know who I am? She said, yeah.
The leftist Shoeonhead likes a absolute monarchist. That makes sense. Definitely a leftist, though.
Watch all your shit. And I thought, oh, that comment was probably true then. In which case, hi Shoe, how you doing, dear? So people were joking, Spoon, you were a Bernie bro, now you're an absolute monarchist. You have to save her. Save her? What am I, the monarchical whisper up in this joint? Is it my job to make women more base now, is it? Actually, that's not a bad gig to have. All joking aside, though, the Bernie bro angle is quite interesting.
Not based by default.
If you do any political content and you go from one side to the other, you cannot escape the label of grifter. You will either learn and shift, in which case you're a grifter, or you don't. That's true. Stupid.
You know what? He's right on that. I have been labeled a grifter, so he's not wrong.
In perpetuity, what great options you have. In fairness, though, this is also contingent on the politics of the person.
I don't think that he's a grifter. I just think that he's stupid enough to believe all the shit that he says.
Watching the creators, as well as how long they've been watching. There will be those that follow the content creators no matter what their position. Those that think it's taken them far too long to wake up, in which case they're kind of slow, or ruthlessly principled to the point of being crippled by reality, etc., etc. You'll not know how all this goes by now. Whereas myself, I became right-wing before I did any content. I went way the hell outside the mainstream right. I am largely immune then from the usual labels, and as such, my journey is met with intrigue rather than skepticism. Woo! So how did all that happen? Well, pull up a chair, maybe get a drink. I recall the lady who first got me into politics back in the early 2010s was a Californian named Danny. It's funny looking back at it now, one would hardly think someone like her could actually exist. She was quite a lefty, had the short hairstyle of your average Lardwell feminist type, even though she wasn't overweight at all, and she was a vicious troll. If people had heard her language now, she would undoubtedly be depicted in an SS uniform and called a Nazi. She was not shy with the slurs at all. But if you're young and in the...
Okay, but like... Neither is Vosh, and people, for the record, do call Vosh a Nazi, but they're few and far between. But I don't think the general consensus is that he is a Nazi. I think that, but despite his use of slurs, I do think that slurs are a little bit more acceptable right now, especially when they come from people who lean left than they were back in 2010. So I don't know. I won't comment too much on it.
The political wilderness, the left does have a certain kind of appeal to the youth, at least during that period. Now, not so much. I wonder...
This is incredibly appealing to a lot of people. What the fuck are you talking about? It's weird, it's cringe, but that's the style now.
Why? Bernie did have a platform in the 2016 cycle, though, where he appeared authentic. And given that politics is fake and gay, appearing authentic does go a long way. I do distinctly remember, though, Bernie's first misstep, when he said white people don't know what it's like to be poor. Being a South African, any discussion of race is where we tend to make most people look rather tame by comparison. The pandering did...
A monarchist who's a South African? That doesn't ring any red flags. Ring any alarm bells.
Not sit well with me at all.
I'm good with
to mention
words right
mathematically,
now.
That sentence never even made any sense. That moment fractured my head and kickstarted the red pill that lay dormant into blooming. When it was Hillary versus the Don, I wanted Trump to win because I considered Clinton to be a cold-blooded psychopath. I still do. When he won, I thought, oh sweet, this is gonna be hilarious. Now,
I also wanted Donald Trump to win because I thought Hillary was a cold-blooded psychopath back in 2016. Now I understand that Trump is more or less a vehicle for cold-blooded psychopaths on the right to use as a vehicle for their policies, their horrific policies that get people killed.
Let the man govern. Let's see how he does. If he does well, he will be reelected. If he doesn't, well, so the cycle goes on. I was very naive at the time. And then the whole Russia thing kicked off, and man, did that make me realize just how unbelievably stupid people really are. I was not exactly politically astute.
So wait, just to go back to what he said about Bernie saying that, like, people don't know what it's like to be poor. Let me replay that part real quick. White people. Oh, white people. Sorry. I don't think Bernie ever said that white people don't know what it's like to be poor. I don't think he said that. That sounds like correct me if I'm wrong, but that doesn't sound like something that Bernie would say. He doesn't usually bring race into his dialogue.
And then the whole Russia thing kicked off, and man, did that make me realize just how unbelievably stupid people really are. I was not exactly politically astute at the time by any means, but even I could draw the parallels between the Bush-era Iraq war gimmick with...
If he was referring to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, I mean, since he's a monarchist, he's probably on the side of Russia, right? Like, I have to assume. I won't assume anything, but he's kind of being vague there.
The Clinton ground troops in Syria nonsense before the election, but that's a whole nother story. All I saw was the machinery do everything in its power to convince the masses the current administration was a dysfunctional clown show, ironically also destroying their credibility in the process. It was surreal, very childish, and very stupid, as if all the adults just vanished. There was no discussion anywhere about policies, at least not in the mainstream anyway. Now, this is just from my perspective. I am under the impression that what drew people to Bernie, and left-wing politics in general, is a genuine feeling of great mistrust towards the ruling class. But I would say where you go from this realization determines if you're stuck in the left or you can go base and acknowledge the harsh realities of the real world. Those who are naive and ignorant, motivated by envy and hatred.
I think what drew people to Bernie is the fact that he's so, like, for one thing, he's super charismatic and he speaks truth, you know? He says very basic, understandable truths, such as people shouldn't have to pay out the ass when they get cancer. You know, the homeless people should have homes. Like, I feel like this is just stuff that is true and most people can connect with.
Will stew in the boiling pot of leftism and are destined to remain politically childlike forever. The reason I say
Unlike
this
monarchists.
is because the same class of people who whine and complain and bitch will follow those in power like sheep and obey the most deranged and delusional trends that serve absolutely no functional purposes outside of appearing virtuous for social trends.
Like the leftists are doing with Trump right now, right? Right, buddy? Right? The leftists are all following Trump like sheep now that he's in power, right? Right, man? Oh, wait, that doesn't make any sense, actually, the thing that you said.
There is not a single
Weird how
policy that the leftist believes in that doesn't involve granting more power to the state. These lemmings, for some bizarre reason, believe that...
Wait. Hold on. The leftists are the people who think that the police force should have less power. That's granting less power to the states by giving the police system less power. Okay? Leftism isn't about granting more power to the state. It's about equity, right? It's about justice and fairness in society. It's about giving people their basic needs. And if that's done through government power, then by all means, let it be done through government power. Just make it done. I don't think that kids should have lunch debt, okay? I think that's bullshit. You know, if the government needs to step in and say no more lunch debt, then so be it. I think that's a good thing. This isn't about government power or the lack thereof. This is about good things happening. And if that happens through the vehicle of government power, then I'm fine with that.
Politicians will abide by their morality.
Oh yeah, he sounds very
everything
pretentious.
They believe in is dictated to them, top-down style, because that's how they believe politicians should behave. And at no point is there any examination as to why this never comes to fruition.
Why?
The very same people who complain about corruption non-stop never see the corruption of their own ilk and blindly believe utopia can be achieved if only they just wish hard enough. There is nothing beyond their stupid childlike notion of, but this is how it
Yeah, leftists never talk about, like, on-the-ground activism, right? That's not a thing that they do.
should be. No examination as to the structures, the incentives, or drives of human nature and power whatsoever. To be a leftist is to be a delusional imbecile. Take, for example, the concept
buddy.
of checks
Unlike the
and balances,
monarchists.
which, if you take a few moments to examine in earnest,
He wants a literal king that he can kiss the boots of and suck the dick of. Like, dude, what are you talking about? The leftists are the ones who have baby brain.
you will
Sure,
realize
buddy.
is a crock of BS. Governments are always made up of people who have their own flaws and desires. If your checks and balances are maintained by human beings, you will always rely on the honorable and the duty-bound folk to keep it as such. If, however, your system does not reward these types, your system is destined to attract the worst sort of people imaginable. Constitutions are nothing more than guidelines, people, and without an umpire, they will forever remain mere guidelines, as you constantly shove in more and more naive and amateur actors into a vast network of entrenched bureaucratic ticks.
This is why I believe in democracy, unlike him. It's not a perfect system by any means. There are certainly checks that you need to keep a democracy in check. It's not the solution to every problem. I don't think that, for instance, judges of the court of law should be democratically elected, because there are certain incentives that, like, if they were to run for office, there are certain instances where democracy doesn't work, and I can recognize that. But as an overarching system of government, democracy is the only thing that can work the best. I think that the will of the people should be enacted in general. So the majority of people put idiots in power. Yeah, that happens. But I'd prefer that over a king who's just appointed by the king before him. Show me a better system. If not democracy, then what else?
Once you really, really click this, you will realize all leftists are nothing more than drug addicts wanting a high that simply doesn't exist. At which point all leftists become jokes, and the more left they swim, the more they look like they belong in daycare.
He's using a lot of lofty and disconnected language to describe leftism without actually pinning them down on any one policy that he has an issue with. What does he think of universal healthcare, for instance? I'd love to know his opinion. I mean, Aristocratic Utensil has watched my content before. So if you're watching this right now, man, what's your opinion on universal healthcare? Do you believe that people with diabetes and cancer should be forced to pay hundreds or even thousands of dollars in order to get the care that they need to just survive? Let's start there. I think that's a pretty basic starting line, right? I think that it's reasonable and equitable to provide that for people, even at the expense of the government or taxpayers or what have you. I just think that it's to expect cancer patients, let's say you're a homeless cancer patient and you have no money. What's your recourse? You just die? I don't think that's very fair to you. Let's start naming some policies that you have a problem with rather than just hurling insults for 6 out of your 9-minute video.
Or a mental asylum. I myself, during the early Trump years, was watching a lot of the Lotus Eaters when they were just getting started, which was all well and good, but I couldn't help but shake this feeling that something was, off. I'm getting information, but it's not exactly making me more intelligent, just knowledgeable. But the knowledge is capped at a certain ceiling level. Kind of like learning multiplications over and over again. Yes, you can riff them off well enough, but there is a well beyond mere multiplication. There were things about the system that even then I could tell were misfiring. Like, why is democracy good but politics is bad? Why do we like democracy, but politicians are renowned as the most dishonest people next to lawyers? Why do we claim to like our system of government, yet we hate everyone in it? None of this makes any kind of sense. I was never exactly...
Sorry if I was saying something. I noticed my camera was broken and now I forget what I was saying. Okay, what I was saying was it's good to have a healthy distrust of the politicians, even if you elect them into office, and hold them to account for the bad decisions that they make. Like I said, there's no perfect system. I just think democracy is better than monarchy.
Honest people next to lawyers. Why do we claim to like our system of government, yet we hate everyone in it? None of this makes any kind of sense. I was never exactly invested in the democratic model, but it was all that I knew.
So, well, it's because of the reason that we hate everybody in the government, even if we elect them, is because there's manufactured consent. We vote for people that we hate because we hate the other person more, presumably. And the people that we vote in don't do anything because they don't really have to do anything. They're not really held to account for their action or lack thereof. The game's been rigged, and that sucks, but I'd rather have a rigged democracy than a monarchy. And we can certainly fix that by on-the-ground action. I know that he likes to say that leftists are babies who fantasize about things without actually doing any work, but that's not true. The DSA exists. Leftists online talk all the time about going and getting involved in local politics. Not something that everybody does, but I think more people should do it. And this is a PSA. If you are a leftist watching me and you're not involved in local politics, then go get involved. But yeah, it's a difficult system to change, especially when all of the money and power is against us. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't try, right? And that's how you would finally get politicians into power that people actually like and respect. The politicians should do good things for you. That's why they're there.
So my mind had a vast question mark of unmarked territory that was open to answers, because it's become overwhelmingly obvious the current system does not work, at least for the average person anyway. Merchant class, a different story.
I'll grant him that to some extent. Like I said, our democracy is fundamentally broken, but it's still a democracy, and I prefer it over a monarchy.
And it just so happens that Sargon mentioned something called The Cathedral by someone named Mencius Moldbug, and I thought, that sounds interesting. And he wrote a series of books on his old website, Unqualified Reservations, one of them being an open letter to open-minded progressives. It's been several years since I had anything to do with progressivism, but nevertheless, I decided to check it out. And that book ended up being my gateway drug into the world of monarchy. You learn old world concepts, the thinking of previous centuries, ancient values, before the democratic revolution. The best thing that you can get from reading all the works.
Yeah, back when the world was awesome, right? Back when we had monarchies and everything was right with the world. Everything was great back then, right?
Is to see minds outside of the current mode. Minds bereft of the incompetence of modern-day corruption. And my word, that is rather sobering. If you want to go from curious normally to, oh dear lord, I can't unsee this now, the 5 books I would recommend for that, in conjunction with Moldbug's book, of course. Politics by Aristotle, Leviathan by Thomas Hobbes, Democracy, the God That Failed by Hans Hermann Hoppe, Liberty or Equality, The Challenge of Our Time by Eric von Cornel-Ledeen, and On Power by Bertrand de Chauvenel. Those are some good ones.
Liberty or equality, that's a false dichotomy. You can have both. I mean, equity at least, right? You can absolutely have both. You don't have to pick between those.
To get you started. Then you get into the heavier stuff. Maybe some Robert Filmer, some Joseph de Maistre, Carl Schmitt,
I don't read
Julius
books.
Evola, Jacques Ellul, Robert Higgs, James Burnham, etc., etc. The biggest hurdle for getting people off the democratic drug is getting them to realize their vote and influence is an illusion. They have power quite literally only on paper. That's a tough pill.
You can literally vote in local politics and have a huge influence. Your vote in local politics is so much more influential than it is on the national stage. And I encourage everybody, which is something I can do better at myself, mind you, but I encourage everybody to look into your local politics and, try to get involved in the election process and sway people. And your vote does matter, especially there. Okay, you can change your local organization just through voting, and I think that's a beautiful thing, something that's not possible under a monarchy, okay, or at the very least, a lot harder. Like, he hasn't really said what he likes about monarchy in this whole video. All he said is that he doesn't like democracy. Like, what do you like about having a king or queen? What's good about it? All you've said is bad things about democracy, not even necessarily things that I disagree with, but you have yet to say anything good about monarchy. You just think that you're smarter than everybody because you want a king or queen that you can lick the boots of and suck the dick of. It doesn't make any sense.
To choke down, as sobriety often is. Cheers for watching, and once again, I apologize.
Yeah, okay, he's stupid as always. Anybody who uses an AI background is somebody that I inherently disrespect, so whatever. Yeah, as if kings, queens, and nobles weren't all corrupt. Good point.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you want to see more, hit the notification bell to be notified when I upload. If you enjoy my content, you enjoy what I do, I really appreciate any financial help that I can get. Go to youtube.com/AlecGunterTTV/join. You got some awesome benefits, such as seeing early videos, awesome emotes that you can use in the comments of YouTube videos, and a sweet badge next to your name. So if that sounds interesting to you, I'd really appreciate if you join. It is cheaper than the cost of a blowjob from your mom. So with all that being said, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.